All right, so we're going to talk about the midterm project. There's a rubric out here. I'm getting ready to update this rubric, but the gist of this will be the same. I'll look for the same things. It's just going to have more detail. So it's the only difference in the rubric. I've used this rubric for a long time, but in an effort to kind of get through to people exactly what I'm looking for instead of just talking about it in the video, I'm going to try to make it a little more detailed. So for the midterm project, you guys have worked on homework assignments, this and that. You guys have pretty much been free reign as to whatever you want to do. It's the same thing on the midterm project. So come up with an idea of whatever you want it to be. It can be fairly basic. It could be over the top advanced. Just know that you're going to have to work with what you got so far in the class. If you're trying to go to a topic that's beyond what we've covered so far in the midterm project, I'm not going to give you too much, support or thing like that. Like I'll help you and get you in there, but just realize that if you're going super advanced, make sure you save that for the final project, not the midterm project. The goal is that you will extend your midterm project out to the final project. So you want that to be the same project. It should be a big enough project that you can expand it into the full project and the final project. There's 100 points here. You can very easily and very quickly, be easier if you guys saw it here in the classroom, right? It's very easy to get that 100 points on this, but then set yourself up for failure on the final because you just did the bare minimum. Does that make sense? So if you do the bare minimum and get the full 100 points, that's great, but you're probably going to set yourself up if you didn't give yourself a path to the final. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the midterm here as well as into the final so you know what to expect. So this first 25 points here that's outlined as the program executes with no errors. This means the first thing I'm going to do when I get your program is try to break it. I'm going to try to enter in false, bad information. If you ask me for an age, I'm going to type a name. If you ask me for anything else, I'm intentionally going to be trying to break the program in order to see if this program executes with no errors. Once I get past that, then other places that you would lose part of this 25 points would be things like spelling, grammar, punctuation. We're still in college. Those things are still important, right? For everything that I catch, say you have a really bad misspelling or something and it's obvious, that would be 5 points, okay? Every one of those things I catch is going to be minus 5 points. The maximum you can lose is the 25 points. So if you have 10 spelling errors throughout your project, you're only going to lose the 25 points. Does that make sense? And generally, I just count that as a 5 point. So if I notice a bunch of spelling, grammar, punctuation and stuff, it's just the 5 points off. Now, when your program, if I type in a bunch of stuff and it stops and continues executing, in other words, it throws an error but still continues to run, then I just take off 5 points. If the program completely crashes out to you get the red output and basically throws a bunch of warnings, then you lose the whole 25 points. Does anybody have any questions on how that first part works? The idea is make sure you go back through your program and intentionally try to break it. A lot of students have found that it's easier to let a friend, a sibling, some kids, whatever, go through your program because they're intentionally going to break it, right? They're not going to do what you want it to do. They're going to do the opposite. And that way you can find out whether or not your program at least has some way of telling them that's not valid input. Anybody have any questions on that first part? Okay. Again, I'm going to have another rubric that comes out this week that'll be much more detailed in this, but the idea is the same here as to the overall 25 points. The next 25 points is whether or not this program solves a problem or it's something new. So most of you should be able to get this points in that make sure it's something new. Don't find something on the internet and then turn it into your midterm project. I can tell you right now, it doesn't end well. I've had so many students go out. It's easy to Google search Python project, blah, blah, blah. You get something in there, you turn it in, I fail you out of the course. There's no, one-time warning or anything else. I flat out fail you and turn you into academic dishonesty. It's not hard in this class to do your own work. Don't grab something off the internet. Trust me, what you guys think you can Google, I can probably Google a little bit better than that. That's my job. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. My job is to find things that you're not supposed to find. Okay. So please just do your own work. Also, if you do a hangman game, please make it your hangman game. In other words, do something to make it more than just a hangman or a tic-tac-toe game. I see 30 of those a semester. I want to see something different. Make it yours, put your own spin on it. It can have the same concept of those games, but just have your own spin on it. A lot of students like to do text adventure games, which I'm perfectly okay with. And for those of you that don't quite get what text adventure games are, they're naturally progressing through some kind of story. The user gets to choose whether they go left or they go right, or they open the door or go backwards or whatever. Those type of games, those tend to work well for midterms. However, I've had students that have built class roster programs. I've had students that were captains of baseball teams, softball teams, and so they built different things for that. If you have a job, see if there's something that you can use to find where Python would assist you in that job. That's usually the easiest one people go after because it's something that they need. And so they just go and do that task and go learn how to use Python to do it. If you struggle thinking of a project, make sure you email me or contact me sometime this week. We do not want to wait until spring break hits and then you guys are stuck. All right. Anybody have any questions on solving a problem or something new? This one's pretty much an all or nothing in terms of points, unless you do a hangman game, and then I just take a few points off because it's not original unless it's your hangman game. If you went above the top and you did some ASCII characters and you have a whole different spin on the gameplay of normal hangman game, full points. Perfectly happy with that. Okay. 25 points next is going to make sure that the program contains good flow control, which means I should see examples of block statements, if, else, while loops. Every input should be done on a while loop. It's pretty simple. That goes back to the first part where we check to make sure there's no errors. Use a while loop to test your code. I need to see examples of functions, and those need to be functions that have meaning to them. In other words, you're using it to reduce code, or you're using it to break up the project and compartmentalize things. This is the one people forget on the midterm, is they forget to use functions. I have got to see examples of functions in there. I'm not going to give you that you have to have 5 functions or you have to have 20 functions. I just want to see a good amount of functions. If you write good code, the functions will follow. That the code should execute as clean as possible, meaning that you're writing the smallest amount of code necessary to complete that function. You can write out that function that's, it may take 30 lines to get it built out initially, and then you can find out you can condense that down a little bit. That's what I want to see, is that you can write it out as much as you want, and then before you turn it in, you've kind of condensed that function down. Or if you have a bunch of pieces in your code that are doing the same thing over and over and over, write a function to make that easier for you. And then last but not least, I need to see examples of either lists or dictionaries. One or the other or both, it doesn't matter to me. If you use just tuples, you're not going to get the points. The rubric specifically states lists or dictionaries. Anybody have any questions on that 25 points there? The only time people really miss this is they didn't use functions and they didn't have lists or dictionaries. That's usually the use case there. Okay. Last but not least is the last 25 points. This is your midterm project. It should be well documented, meaning that you should make use of block and line comments in order to describe the program as a whole. What that means is I should see the initial comments that you have on every homework assignment that you do. Right below those initial comments, I should have a block comment that explains what your midterm project is. For example, this is my hangman game that I went and changed and did blah, 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 blah. Or this is my text adventure game as we progress through the jungle of Narnia. I do whatever it is, that's what needs to be in that block statement. Then throughout your project, I should be seeing line comments that describe what the functions do and different key parts of your assignment. Long story short, there should be well-documented comments throughout your project. I encourage you to take the time to do this because when you get to the final project, it will make your other 20 points on that homework or on that assignment a whole lot easier if you document now. So just document everything you can in different sections to make sense. It doesn't have to be lengthy. You can say, like, this is inside of a function. This is the function that calculates the player health. Whatever it is, that's fine. I don't need a whole paragraph. Total there, 100 points. Anybody have any questions on that midterm project in terms of grading? All right. What's going to happen is you guys are going to work on this midterm project. If we go back and look at the syllabus, you guys just finished up with week 7. You now have 2 weeks to work on this midterm project. All right. That's also going to overlap with spring break, meaning that you technically have 3 weeks to work on this midterm project. Does everybody get that? That's a lot of time to work on that project from start of today till the end of that 3 weeks. During that time, we won't meet in this classroom. If you want to meet with me or whatever, you're more than welcome to come down to my office, but I'm giving you class time during those 3 weeks to also work on this midterm project. So between class time and all, the time that you have available at home to work on normal projects for this class, there's a lot of time to work on this. Which means if you're struggling at some point, you have a lot of time to reach out and get help. Please do not wait till the last minute to work on these projects. Students do that every semester. They panic, they go find code on the internet, and then they get hit for cheating. Don't do that, please. When we go to the final project, which I'll just preview this, I'll talk about it more at the time. You'll notice that the final project is very similar to what we did with the midterm. So it is an extension. The only difference is this last 40 points where you're going to use the logging module, which we'll talk about. When you're using that logging module, you're actually going to convert some of those comments that you had over to statements inside the logging module. That's the reason that I'm having you go and document so much in the midterm, is so that you can convert those comments over to logging comments later on. The last part is object-oriented programming. Again, that's something we're going to cover here later on. So if you get 100% on the midterm project, in theory, you should get at least these 60 points on the final project, given that your program still executes with no errors and documentation's all done, etc. All right, other things on the midterm. I will grade your guys' midterm projects as soon as that, that date hits. I will start grading them. It will take me time to get through these midterm projects. I'm going to try to get all your other homework graded here during spring break and all of that. So by the time you turn in your midterm project, everything else should be graded and submitted. Part of that is I have to have midterm grades in for everybody in this class. So I will make sure all those other grades are caught up. You're up to go. And then when you turn in the midterm project, I start in on those. Just know that it typically takes me about 30 minutes, depending on the project, 30 minutes to 45 minutes to grade a student's assignment, because I try to give you a lot of feedback on the midterm. So if you're missing points, I'll tell you where to go. I'll tell you where you should go for the final project, or at least give you suggestions as to where you should go for the final project. But if it's going to take 30 to 45 minutes a student, and I have roughly 75 students, it takes me time to grade it. So just be patient. I will get it back to you in a timely manner. If you miss things on the midterm project, say you end up with a 70 or a 60 or whatever because you missed points. If you fix those items when you turn it in for your final project, I will go back and give you half credit for those. Meaning that if you got an 80 on your midterm project, you fixed everything that was broken on the final project, then when I grade the final project with you, we will go back and give you 10 points on the midterm, bringing it from an 80 to a 90. Does everybody understand that part? In some of the old videos, it will say that you get the full credit back. I had to make a change on that last year. It's only half the credit back. But that means if you missed 25 points, you're able to get 13 points back. If you missed 50 points, you're still able to get 25 points back. which means you shouldn't really fail the midterm project. If you actually went back and fixed everything, your grade should be higher unless you really didn't do so well on the midterm project to start with. If I feel that when I take a look at your midterm project and I grade it, that it's not looking good, I will put in the feedback that you should schedule an appointment with me. And that's just purely to help you get back on the right track so that you're not going to fall back. So please read the feedback on that midterm project. I try to explain everything in there as to what you should be doing or what needs to be fixed. I don't usually give you back code like, here's the code to fix your problem. It's more of, here's your problem, here's specifically what you should look at for using to fix it. If you want to schedule a meeting with me on that on the midterm project, I'm more than happy to do that. From the time you get your midterm project back and graded, you have until the very end of the class to finish your final project. So you should be working on that as we're learning the last few topics in this class. There again, when we get back to the end schedule, you'll notice that when we come back, we're going to cover 1, 2, 3, 4 more topics, and then you have 3 weeks to work on your final project as well. There will be no final exam. I know it lists it here. It's not a final exam anymore. What happens on the final project is I schedule a meeting with every single one of you for 30 minutes. During that time, we actually grade the final project together. I ask you questions about your project. That stands in place of the final exam. Once we've graded the final project, we'll go back and give you any credit that you have on the midterm project. We'll grade any remaining homework assignments that may not be graded for you. You will end up with your final grade during that meeting. And that starts on week 15, meaning that if you're caught up and done with everything on the Monday of the week 15, you can schedule that meeting on that Monday. You're done for the semester. You don't have to meet anymore. You can go focus on your other classes. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about the final project when that rolls around. But just so you know the trajectory of how we're moving through with the midterm project. I will get this new rubric posted this week. Again, it's not going to change in terms of the requirements. It's just going to be more detailed as to what the point breakdown is. Anybody here or online have any questions? All right, go ahead and stop this recording.